You're listening to She's the Business podcast. Okay, and I'm here with Leonie Rastas from the C6. Your business name, isn't that right? But I was thinking, I always think of you as the C-section recovery whisperer. So I was about to say that instead of your business name. But welcome, Leonie. I'm so happy to have you here on the podcast with me today.
Oh, thanks so much, Jess. I'm really happy to be here too.
Awesome. Really. And we are going to dive into your story because I think this is just such a fascinating story of how your business has come about. But before we do that, do you want to tell us a bit about, what you do in your business and who it is that you serve?
Okay. Well, I serve mothers who've had caesarean sections, their partners and their families, really, just providing information and knowledge about navigating the recovery journey. So, and I help them through group coaching, individual coaching, video series, an ebook, a wound splint that I invented, and also more recently the C-section recovery manual that I co-wrote with another midwife, just as a manual for women to be able to just access information, evidence-based information about their recovery.
Amazing. It just sounds like so much in there, which is fantastic. But this is, I guess, a fairly new business. And you had a previous career for how many years were you actually a practicing midwife for?
From about 1980 through to 2017. So, wow. Quite a long career. And during that time, I had 6 of my own caesarean births. So I always had a real empathy for women who had caesarean births, and particularly who had births where there was birth trauma also involved. Yes. So.
Yeah. And what prompted you to, I guess, step out of that midwifery career that you had and author a book and then start coaching? So tell me a bit about where that came from. What was it?
Yeah, it's a bit of a story, actually. I often felt really bad discharging women home after 2 or 3 days with, very little opportunity to actually give them knowledge and information about what was to come in the next 6 weeks. One of the things that I was really onto was wound support. Having had my own experience, I knew how important it was to protect the wound during sudden movements such as coughing, sneezing, even laughing. Where I did my nursing course, it was really nursing 101 to make sure every surgical patient had a cushion or a rolled up towel to hold over their wound during those sudden movements. And one day there was busy making a rolled up towel and taping it together. And the dad said to me, "What are you doing there?" And I said, "Well, this is a really important aid for recovery and to reduce pain. It's to hold over the wound." And he challenged me that why didn't we have something already set up from the storeroom, something that was already available? And I thought, well, I've been doing this for 40 years. I really couldn't answer that. And I thought, maybe I'll have a look and see if there is anything on the market. And I looked for a long time, couldn't find anything. And being creative by birth, and I've always been into making things, so I fiddled around and it took me a few months to get the prototype right. And so I made this, it just looks like a rolled up towel really, but it's a bit fancier. It's got a label, a cover and an elastic belt for the women to wear. And I actually registered it with the Therapeutic Goods Administration for use as a medical aid. And the women who used it found it fantastic. And it sort of was really the very beginning. And then I realised that people were having difficulty understanding why it was needed, how it was used. And so that was how I got into education. And I thought, I think I need to support this splint which I called the surgical aftercare splint. I need to support this with some education. So that was how Caesar Care was born, really. I just set up a platform, registered a business, and set up a platform to be able to educate with videos and short courses and, coaching, one-to-one coaching and group coaching. And I also set up a Facebook group called All Things C-Section, which is growing daily. It's quite amazing. Often women are posting photos of their stitches, asking, is it normal, and asking questions that really, sadly, they shouldn't have to be asking. If they were getting that knowledge before they left hospital, that would be, the best practice. However, what I know from my own work is that we don't get an awful lot of time to sit and teach our women. One, because they've got heavy medication on board to ease the pain, so they're not really that teachable. And two, visitors flood in, from like big women who have the spinal anesthetics. It's like the visitors are in within an hour, and it's really hard to clear the room to get the opportunity to teach. So we've got a few things working against us. We've also got a global shortage of midwives. So we're just really under the pump. And yeah, that was my regret often, was that I didn't get to spend enough time. And there's so much to tell after surgery about rehabilitation and getting back to your previous state.
I was sitting here thinking, well, I had 2 caesareans and nobody ever told me to hold something against my stomach to support it during coughing. And I had really good care, at a private hospital. And I just wonder, well, what else wasn't I told? What else did I miss out on? And maybe I was lucky, but, certainly it's kind of starts to get a little bit scary, doesn't it? Because you think, well, you're only in there for such a short time. And really, once the baby's out, the focus is on the baby, because we're thinking, right, we've got this brand new baby. How are we going to keep it alive? And all of the things around that. And yeah, I suppose the actual mother and the healing of that surgery certainly takes a little bit of the back seat. And, I certainly expected myself. I remember the first time I was like, well, I'm fit and healthy. I'd exercised through my pregnancy and I thought, I'm just going to spring back. I don't need to wait 3 months before I exercise again. I'll be back at the gym within 8 weeks. And, I had all these like really outrageous expectations of what I could do. And I found that the waiting was really difficult. But I also had things like a pram that was too heavy and I was lifting it into the back of the car. And it was I think it was a 7 kilo. Oh, no, maybe it was definitely well over 10 kilos, the first pram. And then we got a lighter one, but it was kind of after that initial period where I was lifting this huge pram into the boot of the car. And I kind of was doing things thinking, well, if it hurts, I'll stop.
Yeah,
I think I'll be fine. But
yeah, and often you've got no one else to do it, and the design of those capsules is really not good for your back either. And one of the things that I did was to make a little papoose and just always take the baby out and put it into the little carry. It was like a little carry sling, because I just couldn't physically manage the capsule. Of course, they've evolved since 1980 when I had my first. Yeah, that was a very big issue.
Wow.
Yeah.
And so you went through 6 caesarean births yourself. And then obviously, helped so many other women as a midwife. And then, so you've taken all of this sort of knowledge and then popped it into a book. Like, what do you see as being some of the biggest places that we lack knowledge, like that there's really not a lot of education around? Because I'm sure there's a few general ones that people cover, but what have you seen as the biggest gap in the knowledge that we are sharing to women as they come through and come out of hospital?
Well, I think the wound the incision is one of the big things, because there's a process for healing. It goes through 4 stages, and it really begins as soon as the stitches are in. The inflammation process starts, and then it goes on to proliferation and eventually the healing. And to say to the woman on discharge, go, just keep your wound cleaned and dry, and go and see your doctor in 6 weeks. So much can happen in those early weeks, and 3 to 15% of women end up with infected stitches, and some 2 to 8% actually burst open. Now,
wow.
It may only be a pinprick size or several pinpricks, or it can be the whole wound can open. So it's really important that women are taught how to assess the wound progress, healing progress. Always say, get a handheld mirror and just lift, because there's always an overhang initially after the baby's born. We have to get rid of all of that to do exercises. So lift that up and check it out with a mirror and write it down. And I've actually developed a 6-week checklist so that everything, because infection can happen right up to day 30, and day 10 is about the time that it doesn't really present in hospital, very rarely, but so it's going to happen at home. And if you don't know the early warning signs, you can end up with really big complications that can lead to sepsis, and sepsis unchecked can lead to death, or very serious problems with extremities and limbs. And there is a video called The 5 Guide, Enhancing Caesarean Recovery. And the mum there was actually a midwife, and she kept going back to the doctor and saying, something's not right, feel like I've got the flu. She was being treated for mastitis, and she ended up with sepsis. And at 6 months, she had a bilateral amputation of her legs because they had, the sepsis had extended. So it's really important for mums to know it's, it's so hard to put yourself first, because the baby's there with their demands 24/7, and, to even remember to check your wound can be. So that's my big thing, is wound care. I think we need to do better. And if we did do better, then there'd be less gory photos on social media. But, if they've got nowhere else to go, that's okay too.
Yes. Yeah. And so there's, in this book, is the idea that there's like something that you're thinking, I'm not sure what's going on. You can kind of look it up and see what it should be and what it, maybe some of the signs of things that aren't quite right. And then you can obviously go and get some care. Is that the idea?
Yes. There's 12 chapters of challenges that can present, and also tips to be able to feed baby comfortably, some good feeding positions. And then there's a checklist, the 6-week checklist. So each day we're encouraging mums to just tick off, if they've had their tablets, they've had the 3 meals and had enough water to drink. And there's a few other little things that might be popping up, just to signpost them. And then in each chapter, we've got resources and referral points, agencies that we suggest. The book, it was a collaboration between the UK and Australia. So Janine has put, in the UK, she's put all of her references and resources there, and same for Australia. So it's just basically letting women know there is help out there. Like, the obstetrician's job really does finish with the hospital, and then you don't get to see him again for 6 weeks. And so if you don't really understand and know how to monitor your own health in that 6 weeks, you could very well miss some of the real early warning signs. So it has a big index, and it's also got journal pages, blank journal pages, as a personal sort of journal to record your progress and your good days, your bad days, your wins. So it's quite I say that it's a bit like, the baby, we have baby books to record the baby's milestones. Well, this in a way, is like the mother's memory book to record all her experience after cesarean.
Yeah. I'm just sitting here with goosebumps because I'm just thinking those 6 weeks, it sounds like such a short time. And I think that we just gloss over it. There is no focus given to it. You're so right that they're absolutely critical. And we're literally sent home, even though we've had the best care in hospital, you're kind of sent home with no information. You might be going to see someone about the baby and they're checking that the baby and the baby's feeding and, the health nurse, but there's nobody actually checking you. And I know, well, certainly for myself, the first cesarean I had was an emergency one that wasn't planned. It was, baby got stuck. There was no other option. It was an emergency, quite traumatic. And I don't even think that, processing that kind of experience, I look back now and think, gosh, if I had my time again, all the things I would do differently, all of that stuff. And half of it was really just a complete lack of understanding or knowledge of what I was going through at the time. And I think this is so valuable, what you've created, that it could really be like your toolkit. If you're going in to have a baby, you think that you might have a cesarean or you just having one, being armed with this knowledge to help you through is just so important. And, I kind of wonder why are we not being more educated about it? Because, it felt like at antenatal classes, it was all about just having a natural birth. And, they're very much focusing on that. And I wonder why, when the surgery is so huge, it's actually really major surgery, why we aren't educated more on, well, if this happens, this is what to expect and this is what to do.
Yes, I really can't answer that, but I know that a lot of women who have elective cesareans don't go to birth classes for that very reason. They know that it won't be addressed. And we also know that the cesarean rate is increasing. We're up to 37.2%, which is over 500% increase since I had my first. So it's why we're not spending more time. Some hospitals, I must admit, some offering cesarean birth classes. I don't know how much content is looking at the recovery, or if it's just demystifying, the mission and what happens in theatre and who'll be there. But in theatre, because that's a shock in itself, being wheeled into that theatre with the bright lights and the stainless steel everywhere, monitor, and strangers, because we have to have, 2 nurses and a scout and an anaesthetist and a paediatrician and a midwife. It's just a very busy situation. So, maybe, I don't know, that the classes might be dealing more with that. But I think it really is time, and I'm hoping, well, there is a review underway of childbirth education and recommendations, like certainly in the UK, they recommend that everything is discussed with the woman for the cesarean, but we don't have any of those guidelines in Australia. So I guess I saw that gap, and that sort of inspired me to set up the business to cover that niche. And I guess the other thing that really inspired me was my own experience of birth trauma with one of my babies. It was, we had no words for it that was 34 years ago. There was no words, but today it would be called obstetric violence. What happened to me in theatre was obstetric violence, and it was really dehumanising and just a real violation, really. And so that has been, I guess I often could identify, without even words being spoken, I could identify the mums who'd experienced trauma. And I would think, oh my gosh, I mean, my birth trauma ended up with PTSD 3 months after the caesarean. I read an article about a woman said she'd had a failed anaesthetic for an abdominal op, and she described the scalpel as feeling like a hot knife cutting through butter. And that was my trigger. That took me right back into theatre. And I ended up with PTSD, and I wasn't well at all for some time and couldn't sleep. I was hypervigilant. I was really, in a bad place. And finally I got some help and got through it. But when I see these women who look like they have been really traumatized. It's really hard for me to speak out and say, look, I'm worried for your future, because they're all excited about their baby and then I have no contact with them after they go home. So all of that really left me often feeling that I, hadn't done my best. But I think the book has really helped me to sort of process my own trauma. Or it's like a bookend. I feel like it's accomplished. It's finished now. I survived. I got through, and I had another Caesar after that, which, was fine. But I think that's been a real driving force. I knew I had to do something for women, both after, a normal, straightforward Caesar, as well as these women who have experienced trauma.
Yeah. Oh, I can just see the amount of knowledge and experience that you've had personally come into this book. It must feel quite healing, really, like you just said, to actually be able to impart it and think I've done everything I can to help someone. I've put it all, you've poured your life into this book and given them all of the benefit of that knowledge and experience and all the things that you've been through over the years and all the medical as well. You've been working in that field as an expert. So, I just it really feels to me like this has been your purpose. And, those years that you spent as a midwife was sort of leading you here, really, wasn't it?
Absolutely. Yeah, it does. It honestly feels like a calling. I couldn't put it down. And when I was feeling burnt out and just sick to death of it, it was like, no, this is a job that you have to do.
Yeah.
And then you can retire. So I feel like now I'm in the transition to retirement. And it was really interesting that I didn't have the language, birth trauma and obstetric violence, until after the book was launched. And I just find that really curious, because I wonder if I had have been given that language and had have realised that what happened to me was violence, I don't know how that would have flavoured the book, but I feel I can speak dispassionately about it now. I can say, these are the facts. That's what happened to me. I survived, and you can too. That's what I want to say to people.
Yeah.
That to validate it can happen, but it can be healed. And I feel that that's the side I'm on now. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, and helping people through that time when maybe you start to mistrust some of the advice that you have been getting, or really feeling like there's a huge gap or a lack there, you can kind of step in to help fill that gap, purely because there just hasn't been that information there, which is really, really great. And are you finding that there's a lot more conversations starting to happen now about this?
Oh, absolutely. Yes. It's amazing. And just having that framework, that language, and helping women to find their voice and to speak up. Like I spoke up, but it was ignored, and I felt like it was a silent scream, and I just had no help at all. And it was, but that shouldn't and mustn't happen ever again, because we have rights. We didn't have rights then. The doctor knew best, and you just had to surrender. And I had two of them down there who knew best. And mind you, I was trying to kick them. I worked with them. I worked at that hospital. It was amazing. And I remember trying to kick them. And of course, my legs were dead, but my abdomen wasn't. There was one section on the right-hand side that registered everything.
Oh no, just can't even imagine that.
Yeah.
But it's funny because we are brought up to trust the doctors, and I always did. And it was strange that going through that experience, I felt like this is the first time that I feel like I know better. And it felt strange because at first I honestly did think, well, I'm not the expert here. They are. I'm in their hands. I've just got to sit back and go with whatever. And me looking back now to what happened, I think I wish I'd spoken up. I wish I'd said this. I wish I'd said that, because it could have worked out very differently. I may not have even ended up having an emergency Caesar if I'd spoken up. initially. And they were just saying to me, oh no, you're a first-time mum, why don't you go home or why don't you try to sleep? And I was like in so much pain. I was biting my arm and I was like, this is just switched on. There is something seriously wrong. And they didn't check. They didn't do enough checks. But, it ended up how it did. But I just think this empowerment, so great. And the fact that you've now got this voice and you're bringing it out, like since you've even written this book. I mean, I know because we've obviously been, knowing each other over the last at least 6 months or longer. I know that you've been asked to speak at so many different places. And so that's, to me, showing that there's just, they're asking you, like, can you come and speak about caesareans? And that's just showing that there's a lack of people who are sharing this kind of information and story.
Yes, absolutely. No, it's opened a lot of doors and webinars. I've been invited to offer webinars, and I'm writing a series of 8 articles for a new Australian midwifery journal. So yeah, it's really gratifying to think that through my suffering, others can be helped. Like it wasn't all in vain. That's how I feel. I feel like this is just a gift to myself and to others. Yeah.
I love that. And so tell us a bit about the book. Remind me what it's called and where can people find it if they would like to buy it for themselves or maybe for a loved one who's about to go through a caesarean.
Well, it's called the C-Section Recovery Manual. And it is available on a lot of the online bookstores. It's also available on my website, which is caesarecare.com. And for listeners today, they can use a code BusinessJam for 10% discount on the book. So I'm happy.
Thank you. That's so generous. I'll make sure I link that up in the show notes. So if you would like to check out the book, then the link for the book on Leonie's website will be in the show notes, and you can put in that code BusinessJam for 10%. Thank you, Leonie. That's really, really generous of you. Amazing.
Sorry.
No, go on.
There is also an ebook, a Kindle version, but I can't access that platform for a discount. So
so that would be on Amazon, is it?
Yes.
Kindle. Yeah.
Kindle. Yeah.
Very handy. That's really good. And so how can people, learn a bit more from you or find your Facebook group? You mentioned that at the beginning as well. So I'll make sure I link that up in the show notes as well.
Oh, yes. All things C-section. I have a Facebook page for Caesar Care, but I also have the chat group or the Facebook group where a lot of the mums are asking questions and we have a lot of interaction there. So anyone can join that. There's just a few group rules. And also on the website, there is a link to book a 15-minute chat, or we can work out if they want a package of coaching or, the group coaching that happens in the Facebook group.
Yes. Oh, fantastic.
Next year, I'm going to launch the Ultimate C-Section Recovery video series, but just having a little bit of time off since the launch of the book because that was a near-death experience. It was hard work. And I got to know Jess because we don't do marketing or business skills in our midwifery courses or nursing courses. So that was really foreign to me. So Jess has been wonderful helping me clarify my message. And
it's just been so great to see you kind of, get clear on what it is that you're talking about and who you're reaching out to. And obviously, just seeing your Facebook group grow and having the book out there now, it's fantastic that people can now access the support and, really use your knowledge and your experience, because you would be quite unique, I imagine, in in this space, having had so much personal experience.
Yes, there is only one of me.
Only one to go around. That's why you've got a book, so everybody
That's why I can have my full name as a Gmail account, because there's not many Rastases in the world, and there's certainly no other Leonie Rastas. So.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much, Leonie, for sharing that with us today and sharing your experience and your journey into your business. I think that there's probably not many midwives who've had a career such as yours and then have gone into a business of their own like you have. So I really congratulate you for it and love to see you on your journey as well next year. So thank you for sharing with us today.
Thank you so much for the opportunity, Jess.
That's awesome. Okay, thank you. We'll talk soon.
Do you know something? There are so many people that are overcomplicating their marketing, which means that they're running on the marketing treadmill, pumping out so much content, but still not yielding those results, meaning there are no clients actually signing up. Like, what use is an audience if they're not an audience of buyers? What use is it creating great content to share if the people who are reading it have no desire to take that next step to actually working with you? Well, if any of those things are happening for you right now, then it's highly likely that you're simply missing a key in your marketing strategy. And those keys are really simple. There are just 5 of them. And it's about how you align them, put them together. That is the simplicity that makes everything work, just like clockwork, so that you have a consistent stream of what you would consider your dream clients, literally turning up in your inbox, ready to have a conversation, ready to sign up with you without you going out there to find them. So let's put an end to cold outreach. Let's put an end to searching for clients in Facebook groups. Let's put an end to just waiting around and relying on referrals to come through from other people. Because when you have that consistent stream of clients, then you're in the place of being able to choose. You've got an abundance of opportunity out there, and all we need to do is turn on the tap for your clients to find you. So I've created a brand new training, and it's called 5 Keys to Clients on Tap. So you can guess what it's about, can't you? Well, this 1-hour short training takes you through those 5 critical keys that you need to have in your business so that you do have clients on tap, and not just any old client, the ones that you most want to be working with, that are going to make you profitable, that are going to fulfill you, are going to make you feel like jumping out of bed every morning because you love your business so much. So you want in? All you need to do is head to jessicaosborne.com/TMF for the magnetic formula. So TMF, and get yourself into the next session that's running for this training. You honestly will not regret it. It is going to change your business, your life, if you've been experiencing any of those problems I mentioned before. Look forward to seeing you in there, and let's do this.